right, folks, grab a seat and pour your drink neat as Whiskers and Whiskeys presents Tales of the Trophies, the Big 12's greatest rivalries. I'm Mike with EJ. How's it going, pal?
That's going well. It is going well. Season is dwindling on us.
You know what though? You know what? I was sitting around and I was because I knew you were going to mention the season was dwindling. You do that. You do that every week at the start off, which is good. You know, you want to focus on what you have. But I was thinking, I was like, wow, really? We only have, it's week 10 this week. We're in the double digits, which is sad. And I can't remember. I don't think in the history of the CFP we have been in a situation like this where it's week 10 and like the playoff picture is still not clear, right? Like usually by this time of year, it's like, okay, the Pac-12's dead, the Big 12's dead, or the ACC's dead. And we're starting to think like, okay, 2 teams from the Big 10, 2 teams from the SEC, but it is still very much wide open as we sit here. And that's exciting. I love it. I am super thrilled about that.
Also, it's week 11.
Oh, well. Yeah. Okay. Week 11. Yes.
Which makes it even sadder.
Right. Which does make it, everything's even worse now. But from the CFP perspective, even more impressive, week 11. And this is where we sit.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is the time of year where the games really, the teams really start to separate from themselves, and the best teams kind of rise to the top. But yeah, I mean, it's not even just who's going to make the playoff. I mean, it's genuinely who's going to win the national championship. Like usually it's like, okay, we know who's going to win, but it's like, who are they going to be? Right.
Yeah.
That is not the case this year.
No, it's really not. Every Power 5 conference is alive, and most of them have multiple contenders. And it's exciting, man. It really is an exciting season that we've had here.
Yeah. So in lieu of doing trivia this week, I thought because we really haven't touched on like 2 major college football things, so I feel like we're kind of doing a bit of a disservice if we don't talk about these 2 things. So why don't we, since we're already talking about the playoff itself, we are now into relevant rankings.
I preempted you.
Yes. So
okay.
It's really tough. Like, it's tough to get upset about like the first couple rankings that come out, because eventually teams play each other and it kind of sorts itself out. But at least now that we've had a couple of games, I know there's still a few obviously big ones to end this season that are going to help make this picture a little bit clearer. But as of now, going into week 11, what are your thoughts on the football rankings? And we can just go the college football rankings. So we can just go 1 through 6, because beyond that for now is probably, okay, we'll go 1 through 8 if that's really what you want to do.
Yeah, I would actually, EJ, because but I mean, I really think we need to go beyond 6, because you're leaving out 2 Power 5 conferences if you just go with the top 6. So
just 1 Power 5 conference. Well, here's
you're right. Just one.
Yeah,
right.
and that team right now is not going to make it anyway. But that's fine. We can go.
Whoa. What? Why?
Oh, you're right. There's only 1. It's only 1. Sorry, for some reason I thought they caught a second one. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah.
All right. So the rankings right now are 1 Ohio State, 2 Georgia, 3 Michigan, 4 Florida State, 5 Washington, 6 Oregon, 7 Texas, 8 Alabama, 9 Ole Miss, and 10 Penn State. So those are the top 10 as we see them now. Technically, none of them are eliminated, right? Ole Miss only has 1 loss as well, correct? Just
correct.
Alabama.
Correct.
But there's still quite a few games that have to be played that'll end up resolving some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
But What are your thoughts at least of the four that are in? Do you agree with the four that are in?
No,
Okay.
I would.
What
Um,
changes would you make?
so my question is, why are um? I mean, I guess because Ohio State and Michigan are undefeated, but like in my mind, like Washington and Oregon have played a tougher schedule thus far. So, I mean, well, okay. All right. No, I guess if you're looking at, I'd probably move Washington above Florida State. I'd maybe even move them above Michigan where they sit right now. Um, I mean, I really don't think Ohio State and Michigan and Georgia, for that matter, and Florida State. I think all the top four teams have not played as hard of a schedule as Oregon and Washington have. So I can understand keeping Oregon out, or I'm sorry, yeah, keeping Oregon out because they lost to Washington. But the fact that Washington is not in the top four is crazy to me. They beat the number 16. Why are they? None of those other teams in the top four have beat the number 16. So, in my opinion, I would think that Washington should be in there.
I think of all the teams that are in the top four. I think now I I get why Ohio State is number one somewhat based off of merit of who they've played. So you got to remember they also played Notre Dame, and I know Notre Dame just honestly, this is one of the first times they've actually had like a pretty tough schedule. And it's kind of resulted in a lot of these losses for them. I true like again, I know
Yeah.
most of the time Notre Dame's a paper tiger, don't play anyone, get in and get smoked.
Yeah.
But I do think this year their schedule really
Oh,
put
yeah.
a strain on them. So I think Ohio State winning in South Bend and then the idea of them beating Penn State is why they are one. So I would at least keep them in the four because they've at least played that. I agree. Georgia
Yeah.
hasn't played anyone worth anything. I know Missouri's a pretty good team, but at least that was in Athens. It'd be different if they had to go to Columbia.
Yeah.
I mean, Michigan hasn't played anyone.
No one.
And Florida State, while
And they
LSU has
cheat.
proven to not be as good of a matchup as we thought it was going to be, and the ACC is down, I think they're still kind of anchoring themselves to that game for Florida State. But I
But
agree. I think you
yeah.
slide Washington in above. I would say Michigan and Georgia, just in it instead of Michigan and Georgia. I would still think Ohio State and Florida State should be in it. And then beyond that, I think your argument is definitely the next three. I mean, Texas
Yeah.
obviously has the one loss in the Red River rivalry, but went to Tuscaloosa, and then obviously Alabama's like
Dominated.
a zombie. You just can't kill them, and they only have one tough loss at home against Texas, right? And
Yeah.
then obviously Oregon. So I think those three, even though they're one losses, probably have a better I don't know, a better resume on why
Yeah.
they should be included
Yeah.
than Michigan and Georgia at this point.
I mean, it's mind boggling. My mind's in a bottle because like it is week 11. Like that's the thing that like that's I don't understand why Washington. Maybe they're not putting Washington in because in my mind, I think maybe in the voters' minds, Oregon's the better team, right? But like Washington is undefeated and has a better like that Oregon win is more quality than any win for it's better than Florida State being LSU. It's better than anything Michigan's done because they haven't played anybody. And it's better than Georgia's done because they haven't played anybody. So by that logic, like Washington should be in. And I feel like Oregon should be. I mean, I just think they're a better team. Now, like, and that's troubling because like what's like it's week 11 and those three teams haven't played anybody. Or
I mean,
Ohio State, I mean, like I get what you said about Notre Dame and about Penn State, but like, come on, like what are we doing here?
I think
Like
it's just the perfect example of the committee. What's the word I'm looking for here? Been a long week already. them
respect to
just
blue bloods or like
no,
something like that, or what?
it's them just taking stats that are not necessary and appreciating isn't the word I'm looking for, but I feel like
Weighing. Yeah, they're
they're
weighing
weighing, yeah.
yeah.
They're just weighing the wrong things, right? So like in Michigan's eyes, yes, they've beaten bad teams. You can only play who you've scheduled, although obviously they could have done a bit better in the non-conference. Actually, they could have done any better. Like I don't think they could have done any worse in the non-conference. Next year, though, it's quite the stark difference for them. Much different. That's probably going to be arguably the hardest schedule in college football next year. But I think like
they're probably not going to have the other team's signals next year either.
That's true. So I think with that, it's just like they're blowing them out. Where Washington has had a couple of close games against some bad teams, like barely surviving Arizona State, barely surviving Stanford. I mean, you can use your eyeballs. Like I think that is where they're weighing it down. I don't think that's the right way to go about it, but I think that's how they approach it. And it's silly. And I think a lot of it also has to do with last year. Like it's kind of hard not to believe that, which again, I think is nonsense. And I know that's how, a lot of the numbering rankings start at the beginning of the year. Is a lot of it's based off what you did last year, which is silly because it does end up, having an effect on where you're ranked at this point in the year. But I think that's it, but I agree with you. I think this is silly. The good news is these teams are now going to have to play. I mean, Georgia doesn't, but at least Michigan and Ohio State are going to have to play each other. Michigan's going to have to also play Penn State this weekend. So at least that'll kind of start to sort itself out. And Alabama has where they're in Kentucky, nothing, and then Auburn, but at least they play in the SEC championship game in theory, right? If they just finish the job. So they're at least going to have that. Georgia and Alabama are going to have likely that matchup to kind of separate themselves to. But if I were to ask you right now, so I think we both agree we don't necessarily love these rankings. Who would you put as your number one team? If someone put your feet to the fire right now in all of college football, who is your number one team?
Oh, that's hard.
I have my answer. Just based off of like what you've seen, don't think about strength of schedule. It's just like you've watched all these teams probably at least once, if not multiple times. If you were to put this team up against all of the rest in a neutral site, who do you think right now you would feel the most comfortable with beating? I would say most. Obviously, none of these teams are elite enough to beat all.
I mean, it feels gross to say. I don't want to say it, but it's Ohio State. It's the current number one team.
Okay. I think Oregon right now is the best team. I do.
I think that's fair. I mean, I agree.
Obviously, they had that tough game against Washington. I mean, and I picked Washington to win the Pac-12. I think, especially after seeing them play USC on defense, like the offense is the offense, right? But that defense, man, it's tough. And Oregon is very balanced. Obviously, a lot of things. They went on the road in that game in Seattle, and 0 for 4 on fourth downs, and it was still one possession game. So I think they'll get their revenge in Vegas as long as they don't drop some of these tough games, which they actually have a huge trap of a game right before their Civil War. So, but it's interesting, and I honestly think Washington's probably going to drop a game. If I were to tell you that Washington at Oregon State, Corvallis, November, what would you say that line is right now? So it's not this week, it's next week.
Oh, Oregon State might be favored by 2.
It is Washington favored by 2.5. Only 2.5.
That's gonna move. I mean, it's. Yeah, I mean, Oregon might be or Oregon State might be favored there. Yeah, I mean, I hope.
I mean, that's still crazy. Like you would expect the undefeated team. Oregon State has lost a couple games. Like obviously, we know what Corvallis is like, but I think most people would have expected it to be closer to 7 favored by Washington.
I would love to see. Most people who don't watch, right? But who don't pay attention to my Pac-12. But yeah, I mean, I think that Oregon like my heart wants to say Oregon's the best, but like realistically, based on what I've seen, it's hard to say against Ohio State. But I would love to see those two teams play in the playoff, and Oregon just shit pumps them. Like I would be absolutely thrilled. Nothing would make me happier than to see the Ducks just shit pump the Buckeyes. But no, man, yeah, I mean, it's all going to work itself out. Like at least there's a path to resolution, but there is a real possibility that we're going to have some real chaos on Selection Sunday because, like, there's a real chance if even if let's make it really simple. Let's say Washington loses another game and then Oregon is a one-loss Pac-12 champion. Oregon beats them, one-loss Pac-12 champion. Texas wins the Big 12, one-loss Big 12 champion. Florida State and then Georgia or Bama win the SEC, right? And then, or let's say Georgia to make it easy. And let's say you have undefeated Ohio State, right? That's 5 really quality teams. I don't know who you leave out. I mean, I guess you leave out Texas because the Big 12 is a weaker conference, I guess, than the Pac. But the Big 12's been playing really well this year too. So it's like that's hard.
I mean, who would I keep off of that? Florida State.
I would too.
But that's why
eye test, but undefeated.
Yeah, while there's so much to be said about like people having like not loving a 12-team playoff, this is the perfect example of like I don't want the committee to determine my champion, right?
Yeah.
And this is the perfect year where the 5th team could still be the best team of all of them. And in this scenario, just give me 12 teams and let them decide, right?
Yeah.
Don't you give me your politics here, your AD there. Like I also think it's a bunch of bullshit that it's a bunch of ADs from the schools that determine this as well.
Yeah.
Which is stupid to me. But yeah, so it stinks because you're right. There is a very good likelihood that 5 and 6 are going to have just as good of a resume as 1 through 4. And there could be an argument to be made that 5 and 6 is going to be a better team than some of those in the top 4. But
yeah, well, and it's like it feels like we're just a year too late for the 12-team playoff because like this would have been the perfect year for a 12-teamer,
Absolutely.
Like the past couple of years, like you said, it's been like by this point we know who's going to be in the playoff. We probably know who's going to be the champion. It's just who are they going to beat?
Yeah.
And like this year, like even a 12-teamer, like we're probably going to have years like that where it's just going to be like,
yeah.
Oh, well, it's Georgia, right?
Sure.
And who are they going to beat? But yeah, this year.
And I think that's what people's argument against the playoff is well, it's nonsense because there's always going to be 1 to 2 teams that realistically only have a chance to win it. And it's just kind of silly to have all the other teams play their way in to lose. But this year, it could very much be a matchup thing. Like you just got matched up with a team that is a terrible matchup for you, but you would beat every other team, right? Yeah. Like, feel like Ohio State might have had a similar argument last year that clearly they beat Georgia and, they probably win a natty or had they played TCU or Michigan instead in that playoff, the first
Ohio
matchup.
State, Georgia was the real, natty. So here's a question for you. I was thinking about this the other night. So, we've gone from, the BCS era, right, where computer decides everything, to the CFP. We're here now, we're doing the CFP is 12 teams. What is the next iteration? Because like football fans are never happy, right? When we did 4 teams in the playoff, people were like, oh, let's do 12, right? And now we're 12. But like what's next? Because I don't think that there's a realistic argument to say let's expand it even further. Like 12 is probably enough. What's the next iteration?
I mean, it could expand if conferences like further cannibalize each other. Like if we end up really in like an NFL style 2-conference thing, I could see it being like 8 from both, like not too much more. And I don't think it should ever get to like March Madness levels of involvement, but I could see it expanding a little bit because of that. But I'm not sure. I mean, I think a realistic thing that they really have considered, I hope they actually go through with it, is scrapping some of this bowl stuff. Like, to be honest with you, now that there's a playoff, you're already like taking
I'm out.
Away the bowl game shine, right? The Rose Bowl isn't what the Rose Bowl was. And what I mean is, like, right now, how the 12-team playoff is going to go is you have 1 through 4 are going to have a bye week, right? They're not going to play the first round. And you're going to have 5, 6, 7, 8 host a home playoff game against the bottom 4, right? So then the next round is then going to be a bowl. It's going to be a neutral site. So the teams that finished 1 through 4 aren't even going to get the ability to host a home playoff game. It's almost like, in a way, a punishment, because they're likely going to beat the bottom teams anyway. So I think what they should do is baby steps. Like, I honestly, again, like, the Rose Bowl was such a big deal, and now that it's in the playoff, like, it's not even in play half the time to have a Pac-12. And obviously now with realignment, you can't even do half of the traditional bowl games how they had them set up anyway. But yeah, I think the idea should be the first round, you can still have the bye. You have 5 through 8 host the playoff game, and then the next round should be 1 through 4 host the playoff game, and then the semifinals can be the neutral site bowl games, and then the national championship at a neutral site. I think that's, I mean, it's not much of a change, but I think that's a positive change. I know they had talked about logistics, being afraid that, like, if you're a Michigan fan, are you really going to go, to neutral site quarterfinals in Miami, then neutral site semifinals in Los Angeles, and then national championship in Dallas? Like, the idea that you're going to spend all of that money, like, I think they're genuinely, maybe if it's your first time winning a national championship, but like Bama fans, no chance in hell they're doing all of that traveling. So, I mean, I went to the national championship a couple of years ago in Indianapolis, and it was a solid 70-30 split, because one team had won 5 and it was Indianapolis in February or January, and the other school had not won one yet. And that was very reflective. So that would be my change. Have 1 through 4 get a chance at a home playoff game.
You're thinking you're thinking too small for me. I'm thinking like format changes, right? Like, where do we go next from big formats? And I think, I don't know how we make this happen. It's got to be a grassroots thing that people just keep talking about, just like with the 12-teamer, right? People just kept talking about it till it happened. We need to have, like, many smaller leagues, and we need to have relegation. Like, that is what we need. It just like in European soccer, right? European football. That's what we need. We need to have relegation. We need to have a Premier League. Like, that is what we need. I'd love it. I'd love nothing more than it. That would make the season mean so much more. And then it would make, like, then you could also simplify a lot of things when it comes to bowl games and playoffs and stuff like that, because you don't need a 12-team playoff if you have a Premier League, right? Then if you make the Champions League, then you're like, you've already kind of proven your mettle.
Yeah, the only problem, well, yeah, it'd have to be like some sort of hybrid, because the most nonsensical thing is, I mean, they have multiple tournaments, but like the Premier League itself is just a regular season, right? So it's just whoever wins the regular season wins, and that kind of sucks. What I mean? And I think we're so, like, used to and ingrained, like the Champions League and the FA Cup and stuff are tournaments, so that's a bit different. So I think that, or honestly, maybe even an FA Cup. FA Cup's probably a really good example of that, because that, obviously, your Champions League, you have all the different leagues across the world, and you have to qualify for it, right? In your league to then be one of 2, 3, 4 represented, right? The FA Cup is all of English soccer, from like semi-professional all the way to the Premier League. So then you get like these huge David and Goliath. So I think I would love that. Like, the idea that, like, Mercyhurst would get into this and have a chance to play, I don't know, Purdue, and upset Purdue, right? Like, I think that would be a lot of fun. And maybe it's a side tournament. I don't know. I mean, I guess
Dude, like, yeah,
I
like
think that would be a lot of fun.
imagine like, like South Dakota State plays like Miami. Like that would be fantastic.
Oh yeah, I think what you would have, and I think it would be fun, and I think it would. I mean, I think it would be awesome. Is the idea of like JMU before they got promoted, or like
Yeah,
App State before they got promoted? Those two
exactly.
teams are beating some high. Imagine JMU beating, or I guess it's more App State beating like USC under like Clay Helton. Like the
Yes.
idea of just like Appalachian State beating
Yes.
USC in a major tournament, even if it's
Yes.
USC's a little bit down, like the optics of that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be, I don't know how you do it. You'd have to get all these conferences on board, but like, gosh, I feel like that's the next evolution of college football. I mean, conferences no longer matter. Protected rivalries just don't happen anymore. Like it is what it is. Like it's going away. So, let's, I mean, unfortunately, that means these trophies go away. We no longer have a podcast, but we'd have a lot of other things to talk about too. So,
Sure. Okay. Before we get to the trophy, one other thing we have to talk about. I mean, we've kind of texted back and forth about this. I obviously have a much different view on this, and I'm a little too close. So I'm really not going to speak too much about it, but I would like to hear your genuine opinion on the Michigan scandal, because again, like I have plenty of feelings about it, but they're also like, my heated rival. So a bit of my viewpoint is rooted in hypocrisy of things. So I want to know what you genuinely think. Do you think this is a big deal? Not a big deal? I mean, we kind of talked about briefly offline, like if there is any kind of punishment, and it's just so hard to tell. I mean, not likely what it should be, but it is what it is, right? Like the NCAA is what they are, and conferences are what they are. So, but anyway, I never really like genuinely asked like what you thought of this as a potential opponent, you know what I mean, of a different team that's out of the conference. What's your take on this?
yeah, I mean, I think sign stealing happens, right? I mean, um, Michigan just said today that they have proof that Purdue got Michigan signals from Ohio or something like that. Like some of the Michigan played last year. They got their signals from Ohio State and Purdue or something like that happened, right? Like I think it was Ohio State gave the offensive signals and Purdue gave the defensive signals to Iowa or something like that happened last year. So like sign stealing happens. However, the lengths that Connor Stallions went to, and the Michigan program went to get these signs was egregious. Um, and I don't buy for 1 second that Connor Stallions was just doing this, out of his love for the game, and it wasn't being orchestrated by Jim Harbaugh and the powers that be at Michigan. So I think it's egregious sign stealing. I think that absolutely everyone was in on it. I think Connor Stein is going to get thrown under the bus. Already has, he's resigned, right? So I think that, obviously they're guilty. I don't think Michigan's going to they'll probably get a slap on the wrist. I don't think they're going to get anything severe for this just because it's Michigan, and which is a shame. I also think, it's just going to get like there's going to just be more mudslinging from here. Like Michigan's just going to try to dig up dirt like crazy. And the thing that came out last week that like Michigan's trying to, tie, or that they have evidence tying Ohio State to hiring the investigative firm, and they're trying to tie Ohio State funding this firm to hacking into Michigan's computers, which is a crime. Like, not a like, yes, I mean, sign stealing is illegal in terms of the NCAA, but hacking into computers is a crime. And I said this to you offline. If Ryan Day goes to actual jail for like, which is not going to happen. But it would just be like so awesome if Ryan Day went to jail for like for trying to prove that Michigan created or did a crime. Would just be like that would be the best outcome for this for me personally. I would be so giddy. I would be thrilled. So
Yeah, I think that the NCAA came out and said that they didn't find any ties to him. Like they've already absolved him of any of like whatever Michigan gave them. He wasn't directly involved. Like the NCAA already came out and said he wasn't. Now that doesn't mean that Ohio State wasn't involved in any of this, but I think Ryan Day himself.
well, let's let him have his day in court to get prosecuted and go to jail.
Yeah.
I still want to see him in an orange jumpsuit. That would be. There's a lot of listen. There are a lot of smart Michigan grads out there. A lot of people very invested in the success of Michigan. I don't put it past them to continue to throw more money at this, dig up stuff on Ryan Day and ruin his life. That would just be
no, that's there's going to be a lot of that's going to go on, and it'll be interesting. A point that I never really considered, and because it sounds like as we are time of taping, the NCAA has submitted their punishment to Michigan. They have not released what it is, and Michigan has 48 hours, which probably should be tomorrow, to respond to whatever the NCAA handed down to them. Indications were that they would just settle this in the court of law. I think like an interesting point of this, and mind you, like obviously I'm not a lawyer here, and I know there's limitations to this, but like a lawsuit involves discovery. And there's been a whole lot of things that have gone on with Michigan as far as like an assistant coach admitting to trying to buy alcohol and have relations with an underage girl. Also, you have the computer crimes of the offensive coordinator who got canned earlier in the year. There's just like a whole can of worms. And again, discovery usually has to be pretty pointed. There's a whole can of worms that I'm not sure that they really want to open, filing a lawsuit in this case. But who knows? It'll be interesting. Either way, I'm just happy that there's a Big Ten scandal going on and it doesn't involve my school. So I'm just sitting here eating the popcorn, right? Like it's just like, yeah, okay. If Rutgers and Ohio State and Purdue are sharing signals, however they obtain them, and they want to get fine. I mean, my point of this is like, while people might think it's nonsense because you can sign steal, but there's rules around it. One, they're just going to resolve this by allowing offensive coordinators to put microphones in helmets and talk to QBs. Like why that isn't a thing yet is ridiculous because that would eliminate almost all of this.
Yeah.
So that's step one. But the bottom line is it is cheating and it does affect the integrity of the game. And that's the thing that's just like beyond just a recruiting scandal and things like that. Like this is actually like, yes, if you know that the team is going to go left and you tell your players they're going to go left, that is clearly an advantage in the game. And they did like what the Athletic did, a piece that had 60 coaches and asked them what they really thought about this anonymously. And I think like 90% of them said it was like worth 14 points in a game. Like it is a bigger deal than people want to, Michigan fans want to say. And then obviously if the shoe is on the other foot, like this was Ohio State that was doing this and they found out like, before they beat them, they lost 18 straight or whatever it was because Ohio State had been stealing signs. God forbid there would be no due process. They would be going straight to the president to try and jail these guys. So that's where I just think it's hilarious because like if this was any other program and it affected Michigan in a negative way, most people would have a much different reaction. Well, but ultimately it's like, it seems silly. They were a good team and they didn't need to do any of this is probably what like it really comes down to. It's very unnecessary. They could have just very much beat these teams without it.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the Athletic piece because they asked Prime about it during a press conference, and did you see that? What Prime had to say?
Yeah, but I think he changed his tune from the first time they
Oh, did
asked him
he?
to the second one. Yeah, it was. I think this was following like the Connor Stallions on the CMU, like decked out in CMU gear on the sideline against at Michigan State CMU game. So I think like as this has increasingly gotten more nonsensical, um, coaches have kind of laid off of like, oh, it happens. I
Oh
think
no.
it's
Well,
changed.
I think the thing that he said that I thought was interesting was just not about like the severity of it. He was just saying like he was saying at the end of the day, he's like how much to your point, right? If you're running left and if the defense knows you're running left, you have a better chance of stopping it, right? He did say he's like it's not like baseball. It's like you see a sign in baseball. It's like if I know a slider's coming, I got you. But in football, like you still gotta stop. You still gotta stop it, right? Even if you know a run's coming left, you still gotta stop that run. So that was not for nothing what Prime had to say about it. So
No,
um
yeah, and that makes sense. And I bet you if Prime found out that people were stealing, knew his playbook right now, I think he would be singing also a little bit of a different tune about execution of plays because it's
he'd probably be saying, "How can you help us? What are we doing? What are we doing, baby?"
right. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's interesting. We'll see what ends up happening. This is definitely unprecedented. It's not likely to happen in the future because they're just going to put microphones in helmets. But we'll see if anything actually comes of this probably pretty shortly, and not likely to be anything of real consequence. But you never know. I feel like Michigan's pretty stubborn about this. Like the real thing is just to be like, Jim, don't coach these next 3 games and come back for the playoff, and it would just be like done and done. But there's
Yeah.
zero chance in hell he would do that. Like he threw a fit the first time he got suspended. So
He'll probably say, "Let me do you one better. I will coach the rest of these games, and then I won't coach all of next year
right.
because I'll be in Chicago."
Villains,
Yeah.
#villains. That's their new thing, if you were wondering.
Uh,
Yeah, I know. Okay. On to the trophy. Today we are talking about the telephone trophy game. And that is a game played between the Missouri Tigers and the Iowa State Cyclones.
I already know how I want to improve the trophy, but go ahead.
Do you even know what it looks like?
Continue on with the episode. No idea, but I know how I would improve it. So continue on with the episode.
What are your guesses to
What are my guesses for the telephone trophy? I'm guessing it looks like a rotary phone, like the old rotary phone you saw at the grandma's house, bronzed on a wooden base. That would be my guess.
That's your guess?
Yes.
Guess we'll see.
All right. Not what I would do. I have improvements though. Believe me, I have improvements.
So the first matchup was in 1896 between these two schools. Iowa State won 12-0, and Iowa State won 8 out of the first 11 meetings between the two schools. Overall, though, Missouri leads the series 61 wins to 34 losses to 9 ties. The series went on a brief hiatus between 1896 to about 1908. But following that hiatus, the two schools squared off on pretty much a yearly basis until Missouri left for the SEC in 2011. So that's why they have a decent amount of games to played against each other because of all the various games in conference. And leading up to the 2011 departure, the Tigers had won 8 out of the last 9. Because they've been in the SEC and Iowa State focusing their non-conference game with Iowa, which makes sense. It hasn't been played since 2011 or since 2010, and it's not likely to be played unless they just happen to randomly play each other in a bowl game. And this is even more likely now that both conferences are adding more teams, and at least the Big 12 has ponied up an extra conference game to be determined with the SEC. Might be a little too challenging for them to have 9. All right, scroll down and tell me if you were right.
I was right. Yeah, buddy. Yep. It's a wow, that's a more intricate base than I thought. But it's like it's a tall wooden base. Like not I was thinking like it's just a flat one. It's not insanely tall by any means. It's probably, several inches tall. And it's sitting at the and on the base there is a plaque stating the telephone trophy, and then the years and the scores, and then it's a it's a uh like gold rotary telephone with and the telephone handle itself is like the actual phone part is Iowa State on one side in yellow and red, and Missouri on the other side in black and yellow. And yeah, the field phone trophy for Iowa State Missouri football series. That's okay, so it's pretty, what is it? Probably like a foot or so tall. That's nice. You can take the phone off, talk on the phone throughout the as that's the cool picture there of someone after Mizzou won. The one guy's holding the base, the other guy's got the phone off the hook making a call. Yeah, I like it. I
Probably
dig
ordering
it.
some za, some like
Yeah.
post game meal.
Get some Zaz to the field. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so before the 1959 game, and this couldn't have timed out any perfect.
Any perfect?
Any more perfect, any more perfectly, any perfecter,
Any more perfect?
any
Yeah,
more
but
perfect.
anyway, yeah.
So before the 1959 matchup between the two schools, which took place in Ames, Iowa, field testing showed. So basically, at the beginning of the game, when back in this time, they actually did have physical telephones to communicate to on the field coaching to the booths, not the wireless stuff we have today. But it was found out that during just like the pregame testing, that the telephones that the two schools used to communicate with their coaches in the box were wired so that you could hear what the other school was saying. A bit of a sign stealing, potentially. So although the problem was realized and fixed before the game, neither school trusted it. And so they did not use telephones for that entire game. Missouri won the game 14-0. After that, the Northwestern Bell Telephone Company of Ames then decided to have a trophy made to commemorate the incident, and thus the telephone trophy.
They just had some poor grad assistant just sprinting back and forth from the booth down to the sideline. Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Exhausting.
So it was definitely an odd sight light for the whole affair of that game that happened in Missouri the following year. The 1960 game, which took place in Memorial Stadium, had very similar problems as well with the telephone. So it took a few years for them to figure out this telephone system between the two schools.
Jeez, oh man.
And Missouri had won that game 34-8 as well. And the telephone trophy, as Mike mentioned, consists of the old rotary telephone that sits atop the wooden base. And the receiver is painted half gold and half red, and then half gold and half black for Missouri. And that's the history, man. This is actually it is rated one of the worst trophies or the most oddest trophies in a lot of different articles and stuff that rank the various trophies in college football.
Yeah, let's listen. Worst, we'll be the judge of that.
Honest, right?
Certainly.
So yeah, and honestly, there's just only the only real history there was just kind of the genesis of why they use it. After that, it appears that there was nothing noteworthy enough for either local newspapers or anybody else to write about. So. That's all I got. If we just want to get to the ratings here.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Looks, I'll give it a 3. I mean, I kind of dig it, it's a little odd. It's a little unique. We like that. Uniqueness goes a long way. Yeah, it's kind of just slapped it together, just slapped a phone on a piece of wood. But you know what? I like it. 3. That sounds good. History. You know what? I'm going to give it a. I mean, probably like a. Let's go with the 2. It's pretty ingenious, the way that they did it, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of passion around the trophy. I'll give it a 3. I'll give it a 3. Good idea. Good on you. You came up. It was an issue. You made a joke out of it. You made a trophy. I like it. Let's go with the 3. There, I would like to see a little bit more theft and stuff like that. Some more things around pomp and circumstance around. But hey, 3, right in the middle of the pack. Rivalry itself. I mean, Mizzou and Iowa State. Does anyone care? Do they care? Did you find it? They're not in the same conferences anymore. Probably like a 1. Competitiveness, like a 1. Like they're just not super competitive teams. They're mid-tier teams, and when you have 2 mid to low-tier teams playing against each other, that combined midness just brings you down to a 1. So overall, I'm first one of the season, had to happen sometime. This is a bottom tier. This is a bottom tier for me.
Yeah, so I'm on a similar page with you, but now that we're talking through this, I think it's only taken us 3 seasons to kind of, for me to really start to feel great about how I'm ranking these. So I feel like, based on looks criteria, I feel like that's probably the one we have really down well. Like, we really know what we're looking for. So I'm going to give this a smidge under half a yard. I'm going to put this at about a 2.5. Mm-hmm. So I like the idea that it's unique. I don't like how small it is. I think we really like size and girth. I do like how we use it. I feel like it's just like the uniqueness is enough to keep it from like too low, but like the look of it and the size of it, and I don't know. It's right around that 3 to me. Like, I feel like there's definitely worse. There's definitely better. So I'm gonna go just a smidgen. If the base was a little bigger and girthier, maybe be a 3, but we'll go 2.5. So the history, I think I want to, moving forward, and obviously feel free to continue to think through it your own way, but I think I'm going to stick history. I'm going to separate it from rivalry. I think the idea of things being stolen and potentially, lost is a little different, but I think when it comes to stealing, I think that talks more about the rivalry and people caring enough to do that, less than the history. Like, what was the genesis of this? Mm-hmm. And some of the genesis can be, we had something, it got lost, we needed to find something else. So in this particular case, I think it's a pretty charming is a weird word to use, but I think it's a funny way to come about a trophy. And I think it was a good idea because of having that mishap and the distrust, and I'm sure it was a big deal at the time. So I think it's a solid 3. I think the history is just a solid 3.
Yeah.
We've had better. We've had way worse.
I like that. I like that ranking. That's good. Because then that takes away, that keeps the rivalry very separate. I like that.
Yes. So the rivalry, because there is one, they haven't played, I think, like, recent rivalry is important. They haven't played in over a decade. There's no like next rematch in sight. And then because there is a lack of like heatedness, it seemed like, and again, maybe this is just lack of public information, but it's just got to be a 1 with what we know. And then the competitiveness, again, like even when they were playing, there's a reason why Missouri was good enough to be elevated to the SEC. And Iowa State has not been, outside of Matt Campbell's pretty good run during his tenure. So that's, again, a 1. And because of that, it's overall in the lower tier.
Yep.
Let's hear it. What's your idea? What
Zach Morris telephone. Just give me the Zach Morris telephone.
I know the show and I know him, but I don't know that I know what that is.
Oh, Zach Morris used to always carry around like the big cell phone. The huge, massive cell phone that was, the 80s, the typical 80s cell phone. Yeah, that's what I want. Just give me the Zach Morris cell phone.
That's actually funny you say that, because one of the articles I read was like, if this ever does, I see what you're talking about. Well, why don't you describe what that looks like to people that that might not know?
It's basically a big, if you haven't watched Saved by the Bell, watch Saved by the Bell. But it's a big gray brick essentially. It's probably about as heavy as a brick, and it's probably a little bit bigger than a standard brick, but it's a big gray brick with an antenna on top. That's what we should have. And let's make it gold plated, and let's engrave the school's emblems on the side. That's what I want to see.
I like that. And it's funny you say that because when the recent article written about this trophy, because this kind of also talks about the rivalry, is that if they were to ever play again, or if this ever gets scheduled, they should refresh the trophy. And it's like, what does that look like? Does that look like an iPhone now? Like, they were kind of making jokes about what that could look like. But something they did talk about, and they had the Athletic did a poll, is obviously you have Iowa State and Iowa as and this is from an Iowa State fan base is who was answering this question in the poll. So they have the Cy-Hawk trophy with Iowa, and it was what other, now that the telephone trophy, it's kind of really done for all intents and purposes. They're not likely to play very many more times in the coming decades. What other conference foe, or what conference foe would you want a rivalry trophy with? Mm-hmm. And there was an astonishing, so the three schools were Kansas State, Kansas, and I think they just had like only do Iowa was an answer. Mm-hmm. And it was like, which school, like what would your answer be? And there was an astounding like 80% that said Kansas State. So that makes me think, yeah. And so that really got me thinking, oh man, like what if someone could just make a trophy for those two schools and what it could look like? The people in the article said it probably has to do with corn is something that would be relevant for them.
Yeah.
Some examples were potentially a sickle, like because of like cutting, down crops and wheat with sickles. But yeah, it just kind of got me thinking. So that makes me think Iowa State, outside of obviously Cyclones or the Hawkeyes being a rivalry, it clearly seems that Kansas State is the next best for them.
I got a good one. I got a real fun one. I mean, corn. What about, we have the jeweled shillelagh? What if it was a jeweled stalk? The jeweled corn stalk. And it's just a big, tall, 6 foot tall corn stalk, and it's made of gold or something, and then there's just like little like the stalk, the ears of corn that are coming out of it are just like like purple and red. You have like the stalks of corn are either like little rubies or little I don't know what's purple, like amethyst or something like that.
I don't know, stones.
Yeah. But where's the stone?
Right. Power stone. Got it.
Yeah. And you just have, there you go.
Nailed
nice. It. Nice. I was going Snatch. You were going Avengers there. But yeah. And then at the top, it's like a crystal corn stalk or something. I don't know. But like that would be fun. Parading that thing around the field like like a major, like a band major type of a thing. That'd be a lot of fun. That would look cool.
I think that would look cool. Almost like like a staff, like a king's staff, how it usually has something like, but it's corn.
Yeah. A scepter. Yeah. Like, okay. So that's good.
We actually need to just ask the corn kid, right? He's probably got some great ideas. Can we get that? The I love corn.
Yes.
Where's he at? We need him. He has plenty of ideas on how
he can hand it out every year. But no, if not that, a scarecrow, like just a big old scarecrow that you and it can be like Paul Bunyan, but like a scarecrow. So like it sits on a wooden base that has like corn stock, like it's a wooden base, right, with like corn stalks coming out of it, and then on top of it is a scarecrow figurine similar to the Paul Bunyan statue, and you can like put him in a purple shirt or a red shirt depending upon the winner, or the hat. Just change the hat on the Scarecrow. Yes, I like this. EJ, why did they not pay us? Why is the NCAA not? These are two dynamite ideas.
Listen. We've talked about this offline. I think there is still a very massive opportunity to be had, and we have continued to come up with some good ideas. I think we have some good starting points, right? We have at least one, the one you sent me on Twitter, two, and this is just very easy. Oh no, and then a fourth. We have 4 ones right now where we have really damn good ideas that we need to actually will.
These two are like, these two ideas I came up with for Iowa State, Kansas State are like top-notch ideas. Like, that would be bad. Either the cornstalk thing I can't get out of my head, but now I'm thinking about the Scarecrow thing. That would be fantastic too. Like, the cornstalk just seems like a lot of fun. Like the jeweled stock seems like a blast. But oh my god!
So I pulled up, and because we're nearing the end here, and I don't want to take up too much time. And unfortunately, I don't like us how quick of a typer I am, but I did pull up the Athletic article. I do have a subscription, but I'm not logged in this computer.
Sick brag.
And it's blocking me. Like, I got to quickly see it, but I couldn't tell if this was currently what they call this game, or if this is something that they were recommending, but it was the countdown to Farmageddon. So I just feel like I know. I feel like there's a lot here. And I think there is a great opportunity for us to actually put this down. It sounds like the people are already ready. There's already 80% of all the people on this poll that are ready for a trophy and are just waiting for, a couple of just fellas that are huge college football fans to just put something down on paper to visualize this concept for them, and just to get things moving.
This is exciting.
Okay, so this game, like I said, will not be played this year. It doesn't look like it's going to be played anytime soon. But I thought it was worth adding to this because it was pretty unique. I don't think I've in all of the research and lists of things that I've looked at over the last few years, my telephone was definitely not on the list. This was one and only, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, this is definitely exciting. I'm pretty happy about it.
Okay, so that's going to do it for us for this week. Follow us on Instagram at whiskers.whiskies, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our Saturday morning pick'em posts. Like we have mentioned, there are only a few weeks left for us to do this, and it is coming down to the wire here. Also, check out our new website, whiskerswhiskies.com. That's where our college football preview bracket is at, and we will revisit that after all of these fun games have been played and see how right and how wrong we were. And also, our Ultimate Sports Travel Log is located on the website as well. So join us next week when we talk about the Sunflower State Showdown. Oh, yeah. An irrelevant Sunflower State Showdown, because both teams are very good. And if you don't know what the Sunflower State is, you're going to find out. For Mike, I'm EJ. Always remember, too much of anything is bad, but too much good whiskey is barely enough.
Cheers, boys.